UFC 203 is now in the books. History was made last night, but maybe not the way you thought. We're covering it here at UFC's AfterBuzz coverage, and it begins right now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
It is not easy to listen to this right now.
It is for me, but
This is rough.
Not for him.
It's a rough song. I like the song, but
hey, it's ruined forever, right?
it's ruined forever now. What's up, everybody? Welcome again to AfterBuzz TV's UFC 203 coverage. Thank you for joining us. My name is Christian Cole. You can find me at XTIANCOLE, at XGenCole on Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social mediums. But I would love to send some attention to this phenomenal panel. First to my left, Mr. Gabriel Gonzalez in the house.
Hey guys, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Double G on TV.
Double G on TV, and without any further ado, my man looking fly with the hair slicked right here. No, you, sir. Mr. George Hermoza. Welcome, George.
You can follow me. You can find me at G Hermoza, GHERMOZA. I love this song.
We should just play this for the whole.
Dude, seriously, I like that
Let's
they played at the end of Bring It On.
Yes, yeah, I'm thinking cheerleaders right now. Folks, on the end of the table, a man with a martial arts background. He likes to add a little bit of martial arts information into this conversation. Very keen and profound, Mr. Chris Howard. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, my brother, and I can take this guy.
No,
I'm joking.
dude.
See,
You just need one finger around the neck.
Oh, no.
Chris Howard. You can reach me at Chris Howard Live on Twitter and Instagram. Also go to legendarylivingdaily.com for daily inspiration, tips, motivation, that type of jazz.
That is the jazz, and we are the jazz musicians, and we are here now to have a great discussion with you guys for about the next half an hour about UFC 203. It is now in the books. And honestly, guys, it was a card that didn't disappoint when you want to talk about whether history was made, and it was last night. And we begin with our main event of the evening, the hometown hero from Cleveland, Ohio, the UFC heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic, goes and defends his title soundly and with authority against Alistair Overeem, a superstar in the sport, the most decorated MMA kickboxer fighter in the world. Boys, this fight was crazy and a crazy finish.
I know this was a long time coming because Overeem having to come in UFC going back to December 2011 was his first UFC fight against Brock Lesnar. And a lot of people were like, dude, finally, the Strikeforce champion. I think he retired. Not retired, no, because I know Cormier won that tournament, but he pretty much left Strikeforce still as the champion. So a lot of people were thinking of he should automatically come and get that UFC title shot. Obviously, there were roadblocks in the way. He was supposed to fight Dos Santos back in 2012. Right. Steroids and whatever. That's 4 years ago. But now he kind of came back up and earned his title shot the right way.
Yeah. I asked my friend yesterday. I go, what's wrong with Alistair? Why don't you root for him? He goes, he's a little too juicy for me. So
he looks like a machine.
Yeah.
This guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Howard, talk about what you saw in this fight in the main event. Not really domination until the end, but really kind of an even fight as it started off, but then really a crescendo at the end there, and Stipe took it away.
Yeah.
First round was crazy, though. He was in trouble. What would you see?
It was crazy.
There?
I mean, well, the thing is that what I saw overall was just precision on Stipe's part. Just it was very precise. We had Overeem, who's kind of the war veteran, who's been through battle after battle, coming to the front. And I just saw Stipe kind of picking him apart, piece by piece by piece by piece.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought it was a good fight. It wasn't my favorite fight of the night, but I thought it was a good fight. They traded some punches there back and forth. But the Overeem was, once they started running out of steam, and these big guys, they start to run out of steam, and it just starts to slow down.
Yeah.
So you get to round 3, right? Was it?
No, that one.
Oh no, this one. Okay, that was the other fight. This was 4 minutes 27 on the first round. So, but they were still losing steam. Overeem was still losing steam. So he went into it. And he lost it. He had a lazy side kick that almost looked like it was like aimed toward the knee or something, like a joint breaking kick.
Sure.
And so Stipe took him down. And he was able. This is what I found was interesting. Stipe was, and what impressed me most was Stipe was so precise with his punching. Like, so when Overeem's covering up, Stipe is going right around the cover, through the cover. When he takes him down, and it's actually kind of a slip to the ground off of that side kick.
Yeah.
He goes down to close the distance, and he's able to punch right through the guard. He
just
frames
accurate punches through the guard.
Yeah, he frames his neck out, and then he hits him with a couple of hammer fists, and then as he's punching down, he screens the arms to punch right through and hit so precise.
Sure.
I loved the precision of Stipe.
Great precision
Yeah.
we saw from the champion Stipe Miocic. Gabriel Gonzalez, he was in major trouble at the beginning of that round.
He was.
We don't really know who was going to win that round 10-9. Obviously, Stipe finishing the fight 4 minutes and 27 seconds into that round, but were you afraid he was going to be out on his feet there at the beginning? He kind of took a big punch from Overeem. What did you think of that first round? Was he in big trouble there?
Well, of course I thought he was gonna go out. It's freaking Alistair Overeem. The guy just has to touch you, and he knocks most guys out on any given night. I think what's more notable was how Stipe Miocic had octagon control. I mean, when we talk about it, he's the most decorated kickboxer to enter the UFC. Probably the most decorated striker in MMA we have, as far as holding world titles in K1 and Strikeforce, Dream, pick them out of the hat. So the fact that Stipe was the one really making Overeem step back, and even before he really hurt him, Overeem turning his back to run around.
away.
I mean, that was just so uncharacteristic. I don't know about you guys, but I was
Agreed,
watching that
agreed.
and I'm like, I understand you're being patient. There's a 5-round fight against a guy who's pretty good condition. He went 5 rounds with Dos Santos. But Overeem just looked too timid out there for me, and that's shocked me because you would think it's on the feet. This is where he's probably trying to pick him apart, but instead, it looked like he was just trying to be too defensive. So
Yeah,
when
that was
hap-
obviously his strategy was to run. Yeah, it's because he did it so much.
Well, we saw it in the McGregor fight a month ago or so,
Yeah.
where McGregor was booed incessantly by the audience there, watching him sort of run. In this case, it was less by necessity, maybe more by strategy. When you saw Overeem sort of turning his back, wanting to find a place to set his feet and go back into the fight. But there was a lot of running in this fight.
I have a
please,
big question for you guys. Do you guys think that Miocic had hurt Overeem, or do you think that he had an adrenaline dump when he didn't finish him with the guillotine and the big right hand that dropped him?
I mean, are you asking if Overeem hurt Miocic?
No, do you think that Overeem got hurt with one of the short punches that we talked about, or did he have an adrenaline dump because he thought he'd finished the fight already in the first 2 minutes?
So he gassed himself.
Yeah. Because I was looking for it and I was like, when did he really connect that suddenly Overeem has stopped throwing any offense? Really?
Maybe. I mean, obviously with the post-fight interview that they did in the cage, Overeem, I don't know if maybe he got little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Rattled?
No, just like in a different world, because maybe he
Yeah,
thought
you think he
had-
was the one who was getting guillotined.
But I don't know if he was. Maybe that was the KO talking. I know Joe Rogan was saying that he
Yeah.
doesn't want to interview guys after they've been KO'd.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe he thought that his confidence level went up. We've seen that with Overeem in the past, where he just kind of gets a little too cocky. We've seen it with Travis Brown, with Ben Rothwell.
With,
Not Ben Rothwell.
no, Bigfoot Silva. That was the
Yes.
biggest example where he thought
But-
he had it in the bag.
Yeah, he just kind of took the foot off the pedal and just kind of like, I got this, and then he ended up getting tagged. Maybe you saw a little bit more of this, where he dropped Miocic, he got him in the guillotine. Apparently, he thought that Miocic tapped,
Yeah.
and maybe he did let off the pedal to the point where he started to kind of run away. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're like you said,
That's what I
one of the
thought.
most decorated kickboxers and strikers of all time. Dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
See, I don't know if he really thought that because his body was never under Stipe's body. So he wasn't properly aligned for the guillotine. So if he were to get it, because when Miocic came out of it, the positioning of the arm wasn't such that he could have actually even really gotten the guillotine.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
He just had a tight grip, but he didn't have it. He
didn't
wasn't
sink
going to
it.
close everything off from that
right,
position.
yeah, exactly. And first he went over the arm, then he went around the arm, so he had proper positioning of the arms, but his body was over here on the side. So I don't think he could have had that choke.
What's next for Alistair Overeem, guys? What do we see for him in his future? I mean, he came into UFC a few years ago. This is a guy who was expected to climb the ladder in UFC, win the heavyweight title within his first 2 or 3 fights. He has struggled in his career in UFC. He's also shined. It isn't that he hasn't had great matches and great finishes. What is next for him now? He's been stuck in this limbo zone. Gabriel Gonzalez, can you shed some light on what you think is next for Alistair?
Well, like you just said, he's been in limbo. He's fought so many of the top level guys. He's fought Junior Dos Santos, obviously the next biggest name. He's fought Ben Rothwell, Travis Brown, pretty much most of the top 10, top 6 at least. I think that he's got to work his way back up because right now they obviously have Kane Jr. People are talking about Josh Barnett maybe resurging. So I actually, when I looked at the division, maybe a rematch with Travis Brown. Both of those guys, it was a 1-round fight, so I do feel like that's one. Running it back, I think it would be good for both of these guys' careers, considering the kind of skid they're on. But it's just more shocking just how dominant he looked to really be taken out so decisively.
Right.
And once again, full credit to Miocic. Like you said, the short punches were so accurate on the most decorated striker in the heavyweight division.
I mean, the ground and pound that was displayed at the end of that fight, where he literally mounted him and then started or it was actually in the guard, if I'm not mistaken. He was still within the man's guard, which, as anybody who's ever rolled knows, it is difficult to get leverage on strikes when you are in another man's guard. And he somehow was able to find accuracy to the point where he was just slamming Overeem's head into the canvas with punches, and he was out on that first punch, taking maybe 3 or 4 more unnecessary punches. Certainly no gripe with the champion Miocic in that scenario. You want to make sure the referee pulls you out of the fight before you ever, as we saw with Anderson Silva and in the past. George, is he right here? Is Alistair still considered a top 5 guy? Can he win 2 fights in a row and be back in the conversation for the title?
I think he is, especially kind of being on a roll that he's been in. Just maybe back to the drawing board, maybe come up with a new game plan. I mean, obviously easier said than done. Me not being a fighter, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, when he dropped Miocic, it's like you could have just uppercut him real quick. Again, easier said than done. Maybe he didn't see that from our standpoint. I don't know why he kind of went for the choke in an easy kind of. You can tell he was started a little bit, and Miocic could have been finished. But I don't know. Like I said, obviously maybe Kane and Stipe is probably maybe going to headline MSG or maybe sometime down the road. So that takes Kane out of the picture.
Is MSG too quick for Stipe to jump back in the cage? I mean, that's a month and a half from now.
2 months?
I mean, you got to think though, they get
November
about
12th.
No,
It
even
depends how healthy he is, because if anything, Travis Brown just fought on July 9th.
Yeah,
but Travis Brown fought again because he wanted to. That's different than being the champion. If I'm the champ, I'm gonna take a couple months off.
I'm kind of curious too.
Not Travis Brown. Stipe also did say that he is looking to get a bit of time off because he did have to go right into things to prepare for Overeem after winning in Brazil.
Especially now that they pretty much sold out Cleveland, maybe this is going to be like a new hotbed for the UFC to build around Stipe Miocic, and because that crowd, maybe it's a wrestling fan to me, but that crowd was just insane for that guy. Maybe they're still high off the Cavaliers winning, but again, a few months before that.
I want to talk about this a little bit, what you're just saying. First of all, when I watched this card, as I watched through the prelims and then through the main card, I actually had a huge issue with the crowd. I felt like they were booing at every scenario. People who know me know that I'm a pro wrestling fan. I also do some wrestling on the side myself. It felt like a wrestling crowd. It felt like a crowd that wasn't educated on mixed martial arts. They're booing every time guys are kind of trying to find the pocket. I don't like seeing that. Let these guys get in there. And then they're booing the decisions when winners are up there taking their interviews. When Fabricio, maybe they're booing him because he's now the main threat for their hometown title. But at the same time, you're booing a warrior. I don't condone that personally. You know what I mean? And so it felt like a wrestling crowd there who was there to see CM Punk, which we'll get into in a few minutes, who then really disrespected some of the valiant efforts that we saw in the cage. But then at the very end, man, when Stipe finished that fight, the crowd was as loud as I've ever heard a UFC crowd in my life. It was like they just won the NBA championship.
They gave him the LeBron James treatment, pretty much.
Yeah,
and even
special stuff.
Yeah, all the people who were there in the building live tweeting saying it's like Ireland for Conor McGregor in here in Cleveland. So I think George is right. I think they're really looking at, hey, we can really create a large revenue here in Cleveland if we're building these good cards, and you got a guy like Stipe still winning.
Especially with Cleveland kind of yes, they've had some bad sport teams, but they're so diehard fans. Like, they don't give up on their team. You know, you still have the diehard Browns and Indians fans, obviously with the Cavaliers. And again, this is just their passion coming out. Yeah, I don't agree with some of the stuff they did, but when they were behind Stipe, I mean, it was a pretty cool visual to see.
Yeah, all love to the Cleveland fans. Just, you know, start watching MMA a little bit more and stop booing these guys for going out there and bleeding and leaving their hearts in the cage. But
to your
digress,
point, Christian, it is very possible that they pulled a different crowd than they normally would have because of CM Punk.
Sure.
And that cross promotion was probably exactly what they were hoping to get.
Yes.
And so,
That's
the mix,
actually a
I
very
think
good
you
point.
spotted that well. Yeah.
Let's move right along, guys. We have another, you know, a couple fights to cover here during this this tight show, this tight packed show here for AfterBuzz coverage. Fabricio Werdum versus Travis Brown in the main event of the evening. How much do I love Bruce Buffer, by the way? That dude really handles it. You know, the co-main event of the evening. You're just like already, you know, feeling the card, man. Bruce Buffer.
Really good impressions. Like last time you did like a Nate Diaz thing. Now even like a tiny.
Stop, dude. Smokes you.
Of course, I won that fight.
So we had Fabricio Werdum defeating Travis Brown by a unanimous decision. Boys, I saw a very different version of Fabricio Werdum last night. He comes straight out in the beginning of the fight.
Oh my God.
You know, it wasn't anything illegal, but oftentimes you'll see guys come to the center of the cage, touch gloves, circle, and then engage. In this case, he came out just like you hit the Y button on Xbox, and just like immediately dropped a jump kick to the face of Travis Brown, which I think any other man would have gotten knocked out in that scenario. Brown being able to take the punishment, and it was very peculiar sort of karate, sort of taekwondo techniques from a guy who's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah, he's got striking, but we saw some really unorthodox stuff from Fabricio Werdum, Chris Howard.
Yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, it was a running, jumping sidekick.
He just wanted to show off that he knew kung fu.
Well, yeah. No, I think that, I mean, for the jiu-jitsu guys, as I was watching the fight, I thought, you know, if you have a really, really solid ground game, it does give you permission to play with other things and to be a little bit more free, because you're not afraid of somebody catching your leg. You're not afraid of somebody catching the kick. You're not afraid of them jamming it and
take
taking
me down.
you to the
It's okay. Yeah. We'll play on the ground. We'll play in the air, wherever you want.
Yeah, so you get to do some stuff. So I'm not surprised to see some of the, you know, more karate or even capoeira type techniques, because he was doing flip kicks.
Yeah, there was that one sort of flipping bicycle kick. I mean, and he almost hit that thing too. And I would have loved to see a knockout by that.
That would have been fantastic. Yeah.
But Fabricio came into the cage really just sort of entertaining with his fighting style yesterday. And I think Chris Howard hit it on the nose when he says, take me down, put me on the ground, I'll still beat you there. I'm going to try some stuff. And it sort of made a liberal approach from him. What'd you see from that, George?
I would have liked to have seen Werdum maybe try to attempt to take him to the ground. I think Fabricio Werdum is probably one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the entire world. Probably the best at heavyweight, and that says a lot because I think Frank Mir is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I liked what I saw. I mean, I did see a little different Werdum. I think we've seen a lot more of his striking kind of improve in the last few years, especially against Kane. You know, people are going to blame the altitude, but I don't care. I mean, I think Werdum, you know, just had the same kind of pressure that Kane did. Just even against other fights, against, you know, guys like Mark Hunt. I mean, the guy's just Werdum is definitely one of my favorites. Very nice guy too. I know you mentioned that you've interviewed him. I've interviewed him too. Actually, I interviewed him in Spanish for AfterBuzz TV.
Oh, so is he trilingual? Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
here?
English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
Yeah.
I tell you, these Brazilian fighters.
He does the Spanish broadcast for Fox Deportes.
I tell you, these Brazilian fighters are so talented. I mean, not only do they dedicate their lives to martial arts, but they often know 3 and 4 and 5 languages. And Werdum, for me, was a very humble and nice guy to deal with.
Yeah, I remember I saw him at the Invictus show last year, and I asked for an interview. At first, he said no because I think he thought it was maybe an English interview. I was like, dude, it's up to you if you want to do an English or Spanish. He actually came out to find me again and be like, dude, I'm ready for the interview. If I prefer to do it in Spanish, I'm like, dude, you're the man, bro.
That's awesome. What did you see from Fabricio Werdum, Gabriel Gonzalez? I'm curious if he showed enough to you to be the guy that can take out Stipe Miocic in the future. Is he a real threat for that title?
To be honest, he looked more of a threat before the fight than after, because in the first fight, I really thought that Werdum was just too aggressive, too confident. He thought that he could control the world that night when he defended the title in Brazil against Stipe. So to see him kind of get taken out like that, I think it was very good. It made him more disciplined. But honestly, when you look at how Stipe has looked in his previous competition, looked last night against Overeem, Werdum he's always fought like a refrigerator. You know, he's very lumbering. I compare him a bit, you know, an MMA version of like Canelo Alvarez. You know, he's not going to be the biggest fleet-foot guy, but his techniques, he just knows a lot.
Sure.
Werdum, he looked good. He won in decisive fashion. I have no problem with that. I think it's very fun to see he's trying to get the crowd into it, take chances. I don't think he's quick enough to be the guy to take out Stipe. I think if he had shown that he wants to use a more disciplined attack, the ground game, maybe work in, I think he was fully capable of knocking out Travis Brown. It actually shocked me that he didn't.
I agree.
Yeah, and also maybe credit Travis Brown's chin. I mean, a lot of people, I feel like myself included, after the Cain Velasquez fight, you seen him get knocked out by Andre Arlovski too. It's like, is his chin really up to snuff to take out all these top guys at heavyweight? And he took some good punches, so maybe that's also Brown's toughness, not just Verdum's game plan.
And what about Travis Brown, panel? I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, should he be with Ronda Rousey going to make babies too? I mean, is that like, as we heard last week, Ronda may not be fighting in the foreseeable future. Who knows if it'll be even 5 or 6 years till she fights next? She seems like the type that would come back. And without getting too much into that, I mean, Travis Brown obviously is dating her now, and they're maybe wanting to start a family. What did we see from Travis Brown today? It was a pretty disappointing outing from him. He's a tough dude. Bless him for coming out there and being a warrior. But I'm saying I'm not sure that he is ever going to break that glass ceiling to be the guy in the heaviest division in UFC, which to me is the biggest. UFC is where you prove that if you're a world-class fighter, you could fight. And I don't know that he's one of the best fighters in the world. What did you see from that, Georgie?
No, I agree. I think with Travis Brown, I just fell off my chair. With Travis Brown, I mean, a guy who holds victories over Josh Barnett and Alistair Overeem. But even though he hasn't, and I hate saying this because obviously it's the fight game. I feel like it's more so Barnett and Overeem lost as opposed to Travis Brown winning, which means that I think it was more so them making mistakes as opposed to, like you said, Brown just being a flat out good fighter. We've seen him take a lot of punishment in the cage too. So who knows if he can even take that much more punishment? I mean, against Arlovski, he just looked so disoriented after a few punches. You know, we saw after that first flying kick, like you kind of saw him take like a stumble step. You know. Yeah. Again, it's one of those where there's so much good talent in that division where I really don't think Travis Brown will ever be in the top 5.
It just seemed like a couple years ago, Gabriel, that the heavyweight division in UFC was a little bit like when Brock had left, and then it was like you didn't really know who was going to take over the division. It's as hot as ever now with the talent that's there.
No, it is. I mean, when you think about it, it was essentially the two-man race between Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos. Now you got Miocic in there. Werdum shook it all up when he beat Cain. So it's definitely an interesting time. I do agree that I don't think Travis Brown is necessarily, he's in that, we just talked about him recently and I forgot, kind of like that Carlos Condit territory.
Sure.
Yeah, he's been in fun fights. He's been up there at the top, beating some good guys. But just when you look at the rest of the division, you look at where he's at, can you honestly see him making his way back, taking out all those killers, like 2 or 3? And then winning the title.
I mean, if anybody could do it, it would be a guy that's 6'6", 260 pounds, like Travis Brown, right? He could do it, but I'm not sure if he possesses the skill set to be able to get past some of the guys that are at the top of the heavyweight division. What do you think?
I just don't think so. And quite frankly, I feel like the only reason Werdum wasn't able to knock him out with that opening kick was probably because he couldn't see the chin in that beard. I mean, you know, I was like, honestly, you watch it back, you understand this is a heavyweight throwing that. How do you not knock him out when it looks like he got him clean?
Yeah,
so
sure
I feel like, you know what? He must have gone closer to the lip than the chin, and it just got lost in the beard for Werdum. But
yeah,
because when you think about it, it's like, really, how did you walk through that when Cain Velasquez knocked you out pretty good the last fight?
Right.
What I will say about Stipe, though, is to what you were saying earlier, his precision is probably the perfect matchup for Fabricio Werdum because Werdum is so... He was almost sloppy with those overhands that he was throwing. He was looking, he was looking at it, but he was dropping his head and just flailing wildly. And it's that same type of wild abandon that he was having with his kicks and all the stuff that he was doing that a Stipe can get in there and just with precision accuracy pick him apart.
Yeah, folks, you are watching AfterBuzz's coverage of UFC 203 with Chris Howard, Gabriel Gonzalez, George Hermoza, and I'm Christian Cole. And to be honest, I have been waiting weeks to talk. I have been waiting years to talk about this next fight. The MMA and UFC, which you debut at the same time. That's crazy. Of CM Punk versus the youngster Micky Gall. And boy, oh boy, I mean, the coverage that we're about to put in was probably going to be longer than what the fight was. What a quick finish by Micky Gall. I know me and all the other wrestling fans around the world were crying into our pillows last night when we went to bed. I want to reflect on that for just a second. As a wrestling fan, I know a lot of wrestlers. You could look me up. I've been in the wrestling business for a long time. Wrestling is you have to be a tough dude to be in wrestling, but it does not mean that you know how to display the jiu-jitsu skills, the dedication that Micky Gall and just MMA fighters are so well-rounded. I would say to you that an MMA fighter could beat a grizzly bear 9 times out of 10 because of the way they are able to manipulate the wrist control, the joints. They're able to choke dudes out, and this is what we saw with CM Punk. Joe Rogan said it right. This is what happens when a white belt rolls with a brown belt, and we saw Micky Gall dominate CM Punk in, how long was this fight, boys?
Like a little over 3 minutes.
2 minutes and 14 seconds. And when we walked into this studio today, Gabriel Gonzalez looked at me and he said, CM Punk did a lot better than I thought he would. And I was like, did you think he was going to die in the cage, like get rolled out in like a coffin match like in WWE? Because he didn't do as good as I thought he would. I thought he would do better than that. He comes in for a strike immediately, gets a double leg down into the cage, really, and then gets pinned down. Micky Gall takes his back, displays practitioner-style jiu-jitsu, dominates the fight, chokes him out. And, we'll get to his interview after in a second. What happened in this fight? George Hermoza is our other UFC coverage resident wrestling fan. Yeah, we are the wrestling fans here. Georgie, talk to me, brother. What happened here?
I'm a big CM Punk fan. I've been a big fan of him for a long time. And this fight went exactly how I thought it would go.
Damn it.
And anybody, and I was rooting for CM Punk. I really was. But I hope I don't insult anybody here, anybody watching. But if anybody thinks that fight would have ended up differently, I think needs to question their MMA.
I have to tell you, I put $37 on CM Punk last night because CM Punk was a plus 300. Yeah, it's like the money was there. Who knows what he's going to do. Yeah. Really disappointed, George. Did you cry in your pillow, bro?
I went from Goosebumps coming out to Cult of Personality, which was his WWE theme, and actually Ring of Honor theme. So I was like, oh, cool. I was pumped. You can tell he wanted it. And honestly, it's one of those where I'm a very positive guy. So I'm like, I'm that guy where I was like, well, there you go, buddy. And honestly, and I tweeted last night too, I'm like, just by him coming to the cage, he already won. Yeah. And I think it was more so of like, I really honestly think he didn't think he was going to win. I honestly deep down think that I thought that he had no chance. So if that was his mentality and just wanted to get in there, well then, you know what? Congratulations.
If you see the rise of CM Punk on FS1, if you don't have it, go on demand, check it out. You would see that the narrative of that show was like, this guy's gonna lose, but what a trooper. You know what I mean?
And the evolution of Punk.
Yeah, and Chris Howard, talk about this, man, because without insulting wrestling, because you got a couple guys here, and I'm not that you would. I would. Yeah, but I'm saying, pro wrestling, it takes athletes. UFC needs fighters.
And real quick, just to kind of bounce off that before we get into Chris, where and people would say Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was a national champion in college wrestling as a heavyweight wrestler. Yes. He was, he had a lot of athletic background, especially the wrestling. So it's kind of really not right or unfair to compare Brock Lesnar to CM Punk.
He was a real fighter.
Kind of throw it out there.
He was a real fighter, and CM Punk has been an entertainer.
Sure.
And an athletic specimen too. I mean, Brock Lesnar. He's still like, when you see him, even before he got caught for the drug test at 200, he's just such a big athletic guy. CM Punk didn't have any of those athletic advantages that, quite frankly,
he's 37 years old too.
That, quite frankly, Brock, his physical advantages often hid a lot of the skill deficits he had.
Right.
Well, I think it's just a different game, because I remember when I was training at the Gracie Academy, and by the way, I reached out to Henner today because I know that CM Punk was doing some jiu-jitsu with him for a while, and Henner, he was out of town, and he said, I used to. He said the way I knew CM Punk was I'd go and watch Eve, because Eve is Hunter's wife, and I know you know them as well. And he said I'd go watch her, and he'd say, "Hey, will you show me some jiu-jitsu?" And he said, he says, a lot of people are saying that he's not ready for this, but he's a good guy. It was basically all that Hunter had to say about it. But he would have come tonight if he wasn't out of town. But the thing is it's a different game. I remember when I was training at the Gracie Academy, and they used to have that old show. What was it? American Gladiators. Yeah.
Yeah, with Gina Carano.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the purple belts, he used to kick my butt when I was a blue belt. finally got on that show, and I thought, oh, he's going to do so well. He's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. But it has no relationship to American Gladiators. And so they just threw him around like a a rag doll.
Yeah, we've seen Michael Jordan go into baseball and not do so well. We just saw Tim Tebow sign with the New York Mets, and to see maybe how he'll do. We've seen these athletes, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders. These are guys where it actually worked out. People kind of do revisionist history and pretend that they were Hall of Famers.
And I'm sure they both played college ball. They both
trained and enough.
LeBron was an All-American, high school football.
What did you see at the weigh-ins from Punk too, Gabriel? I'm curious because he didn't look healthy at 70. He's a guy who used to wrestle at 205, 215. And he came in at 170, which was the right decision in terms of you can't beat a 185er dude. Sorry, but
well, okay. I hate to use the word steroids, but quite frankly, there's no worry about drug testing in pro wrestling. So he was always going to lose a lot of mass. Take into account he's 37 years old.
Well, hold on, I got to stop you there because because I don't want to tarnish the reputation of CM Punk as he has always gone on the record as saying that he is completely drug free. In fact, he's a straight edge, which as anybody knows about the straight edge lifestyle. These are people who don't drink alcohol, not a sip in their entire lives. He's not like a guy who went sober. He's a guy who's never even tried drugs. So I would say that any type of supplements even are probably outside of his comfort zone. But
all right. Well, even respectfully.
And if you would have seen him in wrestling, you would have said like, dude, that guy does not take steroids.
Yeah, he was like the skinny.
He was like a skinny fat guy. Yeah.
All right.
He seems like a really nice guy, actually.
I got to take into account. I think he was being a little bit of the soccer dad in all the build up. He's being polite to Micky Gall. Hey, young guy, we're gonna put on a show. He finally wanted to put the pro wrestling show that all the fans were really waiting for.
Now you're alluding to him not shaking Micky Gall's hand there.
Okay, Now, as far as his weight and health, I mean, the first time you do a weight cut, especially, for your pro debut, it's going to take a toll on you. He probably, even if you have all the professionals telling you, well, you got to control this with your calories, this is your salt, this with your electrolytes. It's still a tough thing to do the first time out, even tougher when you think it's the first time doing it at 37 years old. So I think that was maybe part of it. I would say I don't think you should be trying just at 185 just because he is, you give up more physical advantages at 185. At least 170, even though he's older, he's at least Micky Gall's height and size.
Sure. Boys, we heard CM Punk in the interview at the end say, "I'll be back." Is that smart?
It's smart on his part because then it kind of puts him out there. But again, we're gonna see how much of a sport it is compared to how much of an entertainment it is. UFC is. To see if he fights again in the UFC.
Why would Dana, Chris Howard, why would Dana give him an opportunity to come back in the cage after a performance like that?
They've got to pair him up right to make it something that's at least competitive.
Now we're talking about pro wrestling. If you're pairing him up right,
but you got to look at his performance. I mean, he didn't. This looked like one of the old Gracie and action videos where the karate guys would just get the shit torn out of them by the jiu-jitsu guy. It was. What happened was he came in and what's his name? Mickey came in, shot that perfect double leg, took him down, got in the mounted position and started raining down punches. Classic jiu-jitsu. This is stuff that was done in the old days. And he turned around and gave his back for the choke. I mean, that's an untrained fighter. That just speaks to how far he is from being where he needs to be.
And Joe Rogan was absolutely so respectful, but just factual when he said, this is what happened. This is just what happens when a brown belt rolls with a white belt. Gabriel Gonzalez, I'll give you the final word on this fight. Should he fight again?
No, and I want to point some now because I've been giving you guys a lot of grief. But all the wrestling fans, you guys especially, I get it. I've had so many questions about CM Punk, how you hating on him. I've had to learn a lot more about him. And you know what? I think it's completely great that it's like, hey, you know what? I'm trying to live my passion. I got the opportunity. That said, we kind of had to pull back the veil watching him take that beating from Micky Gall. And I had to really ask, like, look, I understand he's out there. He said he wanted to live his dream. He brought more eyeballs to the UFC. Is seeing him take a similar type of beating what the fans want to see happen to him? Because quite frankly,
hold on, I have to interject something because we're running out of time here. Here's the point: if you let him go, if Dana says, "Nah, sorry, you can't fight here anymore," what's to stop CM Punk to go to Bellator? And CM Punk is a huge draw. I think they sell that arena last night not just because of Stipe, but because of Punk as well.
Oh, definitely.
He's a huge draw. you got to either say yes, you can fight, or maybe you lose him to another promotion.
I
That's
was
bad.
always curious to see if he was more wanting to be a UFC fighter or an MMA fighter.
Yes,
And now,
that's
you
a
know,
good
and
question.
on for CM Punk's defense, if you say you want to be an MMA fighter and UFC picks you up, what are you going to do? Say no?
Right.
You know,
That's
so
true.
but it did sound like he wanted to go through the amateur rings. He wanted to go through like maybe the RFAs or maybe even a Bellator. But if UFC is going to offer you a contract, you're not going
But
to
if
say
you're
no.
Dana, you are risking the fact that people will criticize you and tell you that you are putting on gimmick matches and allowing untrained fighters to put themselves in dangerous scenarios if he lets CM Punk fight you. This is a political scenario that is teetering and
agree with that.
tottering. And what does Dana do? What does Lorenzo do? I think you got to let him go, and then I think he goes to Bellator.
See, I never thought about the safety issue too.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially putting a
I'm sorry, but do you, as fans, I don't want to look. I'm all for bringing attention to the UFC. I don't want you guys to feed this guy to the lions. And quite frankly, unless he gets another guy, same experience level, same age, you're gonna see a pretty much similar result. Because as far as record-wise on paper, you don't get much more inexperienced than Micky Gall in the UFC. It's
Right.
just a fact.
Yeah, you got a point there. The one thing I will say is, though, if they'll probably keep him, and they'll probably find ways to pair him with somebody that's going to give him where he's going to have a greater chance.
But he's gonna have a
So
more
they're going to be
competitive
amateur
fight.
fighters. Yeah, you're going to get to see slugfest like we saw in the old days. You know, with Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner.
That's exactly right, boys. I want to talk real quick about the bantamweight fight between Jimmy Rivera and Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber, the California kid. We saw a unanimous decision. What's the future hold for Uriah Faber? Should he be kind of thinking about hanging up them gloves? Didn't look that good yesterday.
I think it should cross his mind. I mean, here's a guy who's pretty much won every single non-title or main event that he's been in. Now, this being his first one that he, this non-high-profile match. I mean, he's pretty much won every other one. Now this is the first one. I don't know. He's got really nothing much to prove. I mean, he's not going to beat Dominic. He's not going to beat Conor
Probably
McGregor.
TJ,
you know.
I was just gonna say I heard this on Twitter once and I was very hurt by it. Is Uriah Faber like the Kenny Florian of the lighter weight classes? And that's just so insulting to a guy who is essentially quite frankly, his best years were in the WEC. We all know that. As great as he's been in UFC, this is a guy who essentially built the lighter weight classes, and the world title he held is the same one that Conor McGregor had. He fought the same elite competition, Jose Aldo, all those guys, before they were, absolved into the UFC. Yeah, he didn't get the gold in UFC. He's probably not going to. But to discredit the fact that, hey, he paved the way, and it's like with Rich Franklin. Just because he didn't hold a middleweight title before the UFC blew up doesn't mean that he wasn't once the man. It's the same for Uriah Faber. But yeah, I'd say he's probably got at least one or two good fights, but we all know that I think the elite level, it looks like his time is done.
Might be a wrap
unfortunately.
for him there, yeah. And Jimmy Rivera, talk about the how hungry was he yesterday? He looked great,
he
man.
wanted it.
Yeah, and he not only did he want it, but he was accurate. He stayed in there. He knew he was fighting a guy who is a household name in Uriah Faber. It didn't rattle him at all. Great showing by Jimmy Rivera. Let's move on to our women's strawweight fight. That was the final fight on that card last night. We saw Jessica Andrade defeat Joanne Calderwood by submission in 4 minutes and 38 seconds into round number 1. A big night for Brazil. I thought Bethe Correia won actually her fight on the undercard. The judges didn't see it that way, but a big night for Brazil with Jessica Andrade. Is she a real contender here at the strawweight division, or is you're nodding your head, Gabriel? Yeah, you see it. Yeah.
I agree with that. She was just too small for the bantamweight division at 115. I think she's got more power. She's got more physical advantages. Jojo Calderwood, she's a woman, quite frankly, she's more cut out for flyweight 125. She was talking about with Ariel Helwani, she was having some struggles getting down to 115. So I think maybe she lost a lot of her power that really carried over in her last fight with Valerie Letourneau. But I think Jessica Andrade, I really want to see her against a top girl like Tisha Torres. I think that's a fun matchup. And I think
Torres.
she's right there after beating Jojo Calderwood too.
Yeah, I think a victory over Joanne Calderwood is obviously sets you up for a good situation in the strawweight division. It's not the most there's not that much talent in that division, I would argue, and so her name's certainly at the top of the list up there. George, any thoughts on this fight with the women here?
I'm a big JoJo Calderwood fan, going back to season 20 of Ultimate Fighter, and it really upset me to see her win or see her lose, because if you hear Joanne Calderwood talk, it's so like, I don't know, she's so soft spoken, like you just want to like her so much, and I do love her, so it's a little upsetting that she won, she lost, but good showing by Andrade.
For sure, gentlemen. Any final thoughts on this historic card, UFC 203, where we saw 4 amazing heavyweights, and we also saw a pro wrestler get defeated by a youngster in Micky Gall. Any final thoughts from you, Chris Howard?
No, I just thought it was a great show. I mean, with the flashiness of Fabricio and bringing CM Punk in there brought a new dimension to it. So I thought it was a great show, and they put on some good entertainment for the evening.
I mean, I gotta say, I don't think fighters should be getting into a fight with cornermen after
Yeah, what was that,
was
man?
weird.
Apparently,
They really tried to brush that under the rug too. I felt like Bruce Buffer almost had that look of like, shh, like, don't say nothing. Like that didn't
pretend
just
like
happen.
that didn't happen,
That didn't
yeah.
just happen.
It is supposed to be the pro leagues, not the amateurs. You're mad
And
because
really
your boy
out
won
of
his
character there for the whole night. Fabricio Werdum felt out of character. It was like he popped too much Ritalin or something. He was just like feeling
Hey,
himself.
I hate to say it though, but did Fabricio's corner say, you're just not a good coach? Because so many of the people, with the exception of Ronda Rousey, but even she lost her last fight, the numbers speak for themselves. That guy does not have a great record as a coach.
You're talking about
Edmund
Ronda's
Tarverdian,
old coach.
Edmund Tarverdian, who's now Travis Brown's coach also.
Did anybody actually find out any follow up on what happened there? At the end
I
of
just
the
saw
card,
Fabricio
He's-
You
kick.
see Fabricio kicking at
Edmund had said something, apparently some profanity. I think just saying like, "Hey, you fight like shit," something like
Sure.
that. And then Fabricio's right there. I imagine all the adrenaline
And who
still
was the
pumping.
guy in the
and
red
boom.
shirt who comes into the cage at the very
Babalu
last second?
Sobral.
No, what the hell's
Babalu?
Babalu? I interviewed
no.
Babalu, by
Babalu.
the way, as well.
Wow.
I think part of the team for
and Fabricio at
Fabricio.
the same time. So he was coming in there to save Fabricio.
I think that just your
It's the
crew,
Brazilian tough guy thing. I mean,
crew.
there's that's it's kind of family. It's honor.
Yeah, well, these guys better watch out because
Yeah.
Dana will have all their heads on a stick and
Yeah.
put them on the pink lips line.
But remember Babalu's choking that guy out, and there was blood streaming everywhere, and he held the choke, and he knew the guy had tapped. If you remember that fight.
That's
Oh
why-
yeah,
that's
that
how he
was
got
one of the
released
worst ones. Yeah, he let
What
go
did
let
it-
go
and he
over
got
that.
like seriously in trouble for that. But
Yeah.
there's a spark of honor and pride.
I mean, I get it, and I completely get it, but we're all adults, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, we're professional, they're professional, they're adults, come on, man.
As we all know in the UFC, they are very sensitive about the idea of creating an image of barbarians in this cage, and oftentimes they are very good at avoiding that, as we notice that there is a artistic element from these mixed martial artists, always holding their heads up high and showing real humility in the cage. And anytime you see that kind of thing happen, you get scared as an MMA fan, because the last thing you want is to sort of like bring in the red flags around the country. Oh, this is a barbaric sport. I don't watch this crap. So I didn't want to see that, but also kind of entertaining. You know what I mean?
It happens sometimes. I was wondering for a second, is that a little bit more of entertainment flair? And it was strange, but I've seen it in the circles.
Real quick, we only have a couple minutes left. George, Hermoza, talk Micky Gall, Sage Northcutt.
Oh, that's gonna be. I mean, I want to really like Micky Gall because he first off, he looks like a stud. I think he can be a much more the pretty boy image guy more so than Sage Northcutt. But I just can't judge Gall how good he is based on how I'm fighting CM Punk.
What a bad day for Micky Gall. You end up winning, but you actually still no one knows if you're actually legit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because all of your fights are within a minute. And kudos to Micky Gall for taking this fight against CM Punk when really there was there's nothing to win other than maybe some fame, right?
Yeah.
Like
You're the guy who
beat
beat CM Punk.
Yeah, you're the guy who beat CM Punk, but ranking wise, like that doesn't matter at all. You know what I mean?
It's like, you got to
what do you
point
think about
this
Northcutt
out.
though?
Northcutt, okay, I have to point out, on paper, when you look at the two personalities, it's a fun one. I would like to point out, though, that Sage Northcutt is a natural 155er when you see how tall Micky Gall is at 170. Northcutt got beat down when he came up to 170, so I think, that's Micky Gall just playing a very smart business move. saying, well, yeah, why doesn't Northcutt come up to 170 where I have the advantages? I could kick his ass.
That's exactly right.
And everyone wants to see the fight now.
Everybody wants to see this fight between sort of the two pretty boys of the 170, 155 pound division. I think Sage Northcutt would be a phenomenal test for Micky Gall to see if Gall can beat him. I think Gall's in a conversation to start fighting on the main cards consistently with UFC. I think that's it, man. We've had a really good conversation today, guys.
Yeah, real quick before we wrap.
Yeah.
Obviously, about a week ago, some terrible news happened. Former AfterBuzz guest, he was a guest about 2 years ago, Marcus Kowal. He runs System Training Center down in Hawthorne, California. I don't want to go into much detail because I think I would just lose it on the panel. But obviously, a very tragic situation with him and his 15-month-old son. If anything good come out of this, just please, and I put it on my Facebook, never ever drink and drive. It is I put it on my Facebook. If your number one reason why to not drink and drive is so you don't get pulled over by the cops, then that is the worst reason. It's hurt others or hurt yourself. Nothing will good come out of drinking and driving. Shout out to Marcus Kowal at Systems Training Center. Heartbreaking, but so much love came out of that training center. A lot of people raised over $100,000 for the GoFundMe for his memorial. Heartbreaking. I'll put a link on my Twitter page. Please, maybe you can still donate because they still want to raise awareness for against drunk driving.
Yeah.
So
it's worth saying again. Liam Koval passing away this past Sunday due to being struck by a 72-year-old drunk driver.
Hit and run.
I reflected on it all week. Do not drink and drive. A family member of the MMA community lost his son this past week. Well said, George. And please convince your friends not to drink and drive. Put them in a chokehold. Take them down to the ground.
I mean, especially now you got Uber, Lyft. There really is no excuse.
No excuses.
Literally nothing will good. Please don't wait for something bad to happen for you to realize, maybe I shouldn't be doing that anymore or do that again, So
yeah, shout out to all the MMA fighters here in Southern California, including Marcus and his wife Michelle.
I was going to say on that note, I think very important, September 11th, obviously. Thank you, as always, all the troops who support. I know that we have a lot of MMA fans, and if so many of you watch our show,
all the troops, all the firefighters, all of the police officers, first responders, and to everybody who was affected by that day, which I'm sure all four of us were. It affected everyone. September 11th, never forget. So,
God bless
Chris Howard,
America.
Where can we find you, sir, in the future? What are you working on?
Chris Howard live on Twitter and Instagram. Also go to legendarylivingdaily.com for inspirational tips.
Sweet.
You got me Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, PlayStation Network, etc. G Hermoza, GHERMOZA. Go there.
Hey guys, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at @J on TV.
Folks, you can follow me at XTiancole, XTIANCOLE on all the social medias. This has been a great conversation. We're really trying to build this thing. So share with your friends, comment, have a conversation. I know Gabriel comments on the YouTubes. He's all about getting in the conversation with you. Tweet us. Thank you for joining us. AfterBuzz 203 in the books. See you later.
Next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.